I'm Jane from Blue Sheep Software, and this is a brief demonstration of EnvisioKnit Design Studio. I'm going to show you what EnvisioKnit can do by creating an actual knitting pattern in the next few minutes. Now this screen is the first thing you see when EnvisioKnit starts. I'm going to create a new design. The pattern I want to make is for a Fair Isle Tammy hat. It's going to be constructed out of 8 identical segments that are knit in the round. Now I've done a gauge swatch, so I want the gauge to be 24 rows by 24 stitches over 4 inches. Also, I would like the background yarn color to be purple, so I double click on my default yarn to edit it. And I can select the color from the color wheel. Also, I can just type in the name of the color here, or I can adjust the RGB values. And you'll see that my yarn is named automatically. I could also name it manually if I wanted to. I can also drag and drop colors into my color palette to save them for later. Okay, now I don't know exactly how many rows and columns I need, but I do know that my hat needs to be 8 inches from the top of the ribbing to the top of the crown. And since my Tammy hat is made of 8 repeated sections, I will only need to chart one of them. The hat needs to be 24 inches at its greatest circumference, so my chart needs to be 3 inches wide. Now the rows and columns have been computed for me. I'm going to call this chart hat. And I'm all set. Okay, here's my chart. Now I'm going to do the crown shaping. I select no stitch and the line tool, and I draw a line of no stitches which erases them. And now I'm going to use the fill tool to remove the rest of the stitches, and then I'm going to select that area and use the flip tool to copy it to the other side. I switched the chart roller into units mode so that I can see where I am in terms of inches. And I need to taper the top area and the bottom area a little bit. I want to narrow them down to 21.5 inches in circumference, which means I need to take about 1/3 of an inch off the width of this chart. So it looks like one column on each side should do, and the bottom part needs to be 1 inch in length. So I'm just going to select the stitches I want to remove and use the cut tool. I could also use Control X. So now the middle part needs to be 3 inches, and I'm just going to remove these stitches using Control X and do the same on the other side. Now I'm just roughing this in for now. I can fudge this by a row or two later to make the color patterns work out nicely. So now I want to add the color patterning, but to do that I need some more yarn. I go to Add Yarn, and the yarn tool will also show me matching colors in various color schemes. So for my Fair Isle, I want a few lighter versions of my purple color. I load the purple color, I saved in the palette, select tints, and I select the colors I want. I'd also like a nice contrasting color. And get the tints of that. And now I'm going to create my yarns. Okay, now for the crown pattern. I'll select my light color and the line tool and the knit stitch. Now I don't want to mess up the edge I've got here by drawing over it, so I'm going to disable stitch drawing. This means that when I draw, only the yarn will be affected, and if I accidentally draw over a no stitch, it'll stay a no stitch. Also, even if I make a mistake, it's easy to undo it. I can just click Undo in the Edit menu in the toolbar, or I can just press Ctrl Z. And of course there's also a redo, which is Ctrl Y. And now I'm going to draw in my crown pattern. Now I want to add some stripes of repeating patterns. I want a small pattern with a 4-stitch repeat to fit the top and bottom of my chart. So I'll make a new 5x5 chart call it Fury pattern. Set the gauge to 24 rows by 24 stitches, and the back color will be purple. I'll put a line of my pink color through the center, and I'll draw my pattern in blue. Okay, that was pretty easy. Now I'm going to do a larger pattern for the middle section. Let me look at my chart again. And I'll switch the rulers back to stitch mode so I can see how many stitches I have. I got 18 here, so 18 times 8 is 144 stitches total. So I will use a pattern with a 12 stitch repeat, which will divide that evenly. So I'm creating a new chart. I'll call it border pattern. And it will be 11 rows by 13 columns in 24 by 24 gauge. And the back color will be this pink color. And I'm going to put a gradient in the background with my purple colors. And now I'm going to do my pattern in blue. Use the line tool. And I'll use the flip tools to make this easy. Now I'm going to switch back to my main chart. And this whole time I've been using the chart editor in stitch mode. Now I'm going to switch to chart mode, which will let me paint with whole charts instead of single stitches. I select my Fury pattern and the chart drawing tool, and I can place my chart wherever I want it. And I'll just copy that down to the bottom. And now my border pattern. Now I'll switch back to stitch mode, and I've got some empty areas here where I could do another small Fury section. I'll just use the filled rectangle tool and my light blue color, fill that in, and just draw a small pattern. And I'm going to just copy and paste that across. And I'm just using Control-C and Control-V to do the copy and paste. And actually I want to flip this and put it on the bottom, so actually let me turn the stitch editing back on so I can fix these missing stitches right here. Just flip. Okay. Now I want to add 10 rows of knit 2 purl 2 ribbing to the bottom of my hat. This is actually really easy. I just right click on the chart where I want to insert some rows. It shows me where they're going to be inserted. I want to insert 10 rows, and I want the motif to be rib, knit 2, purl 2, and I want that in purple. So now I just need to cut out the sides there. I'm going to use the filled rectangle tool with the no stitch and delete the stitches I don't want. And now, just to be fancy, I'll add some Fair Isle coloring there. So still using the filled rectangle tool, I'm going to switch to my purl stitch, and I've got my turquoise yarn selected. I'm just going to fill this in, and then I'll use the lighter color and the lightest color. Okay, and I'll just copy and paste that to the other sections. Control-C and Control-V. Okay, and actually I want this bottom row here to be a cast on row. So I'm going to go to Edge Stitches, select Cast On, Line Tool. Oops, I want that in purple. Now we just need to add our increases and decreases so that we get our desired shaping. So first we need some increases. I'm going to use a left-leaning make one stitch, and I need one for every 4 stitches on this row, and I need one for every 8 stitches on this row. And now for the decreases, I'm going to use a single decrease, knit 2 together up here, so one for every 8 stitches. And then on this edge I'm going to use a center double decrease, and I'm just going to put that on the appropriate rows. And also I want to make this edge all purple, so I'm going to go back to basic stitches, select the knit stitch, and fill in purple stitches. Okay, and my chart is pretty much done. Now that I can see how the color pattern will look, I think I'd like to change the colors a little bit. All I have to do is double click on the yarn that I want to change. So I think I want to make this a little bit pinker. And I'll make this turquoise a little darker. I also want to make it easy to see where the repeat for my border pattern is, because it's a 12 stitch repeat and it doesn't repeat exactly on this chart. So I'm going to switch to border mode, and you'll see that I already have one border by default. I'm going to select the border rectangle tool and draw a border around the repeat section, my border pattern. It's a little bit difficult to see, so I'm going to edit my border and change the color to red. Also, I can name the border, and I'm going to call this border pattern. And I'm going to increase the line width a little bit to make it more visible. Now I'm going to have a look at my written instructions. I switch to instruction mode, switch to in the round, and my instructions have been updated to reflect this. If you look at the first few lines, you can see that the instruction generator was smart enough to detect my row and stitch repeats. Okay, now it's time to check out the chart preview. And this is basically a preview of how the chart will appear when I export it. You'll see that it has created a nice legend for me that includes stitches, yarns, and borders that are in the chart. I have a few options here. I can change the name of the chart, change the grid color, the numbering, what appears in the legend, or whether I want to show the instructions or not. The instructions are down here. I think I'm going to have my legend without headers. And also I think I'll tone down the color of the grid a little bit, make it a dark gray. So I could just export this right now by clicking one of these buttons. The image export formats are SVG, PNG, JPEG, and bitmap, and the document export formats are Microsoft Word and OpenOffice. But there are a few more things that I want in my pattern first. Up until now, I've been working in the chart editor, which is just for editing charts. EnvisioKnit Design Studio also has a pattern editor, which allows me to edit the complete pattern. So I'm going to switch to the pattern editor, and you'll see it has generated a template pattern for me. Here's all my charts, and down at the bottom there's a stitch glossary that has instructions for all the stitches I'm using. I can enter a title for the pattern. I'll make the designer Blue Sheep Software, and I'll change that in the copyright too. And I'll add some additional information about the pattern. Now by default, all my charts are in the pattern, but I really only need my hat chart, so I'm going to remove the others by unchecking them. And I'll just quickly review my pattern. Whoops, it looks like I forgot to remove an extra row here. No problem, I'll just switch back to my hat chart, select Stitch Mode, right-click on the extra row, select Delete Rows, one row, and it's fixed. Switch back to my pattern, scroll down, and I can see that it's been updated. I'm just going to check out the rest of my pattern. Okay, looks good. Now I'm going to save this design in case I want to change it later. Now I want to export my pattern to a Word document. I'm just going to open that up in Word and show you how it came out. Here it is. That's all the time we have for this video. The project and export files for this pattern are available on our website if you'd like to check them out. Thanks for watching.